The forked lightsaber was a rarer variant of the crossguard concept, but asymmetric, with only one secondary blade rather than two. It sacrificed the balanced venting of a full crossguard for a more unusual guard geometry, with the single side blade creating a different set of defensive and offensive options than either a standard saber or a full crossguard design. The Tonfa lightsaber, sometimes called a Garshoto, added a second perpendicular handle extending from the main hilt at 90 degrees. The weapon could be gripped by either handle, but the perpendicular grip was the defining feature. It positioned the blade along the forearm rather than extending from the fist, making it exceptionally effective for blocking. Maris Brood, a Zabrak Jedi Padawan who slipped into the dark side following Order 66, fought with a pair of Tonfa sabers when she encountered Starkiller on Felucia. The dual Tonfa style created a defensive web that was difficult to punch through cleanly. The lightsaber gauntlet mounted directly to the wielder's arm and emitted one or more blades from the forearm when activated. It was conceived as a design for Revenge of the Sith and was nearly given to Plo Koon as his weapon. The Darksaber is one of a kind in design. It was built by Tar Vizsla, the only Mandalorian ever inducted into the Jedi Order, and it reflected both of his identities. The blade was flat and angular, shaped like a traditional sword rather than a cylindrical plasma blade, and it was shorter than most lightsabers. The hilt, pommel, handguard, and blade emitter were all constructed from Beskar, the near-indestructible Mandalorian iron. In combat, the flat blade appeared to pull light into itself rather than emitting it. After Tar Vizsla died, House Vizsla retrieved it from the Jedi Temple, and the weapon became the symbol of Mandalorian leadership. To hold the Darksaber was to hold a claim to rule Mandalore. The Saber Cane is exactly what it sounds like. A lightsaber hilt built into the handle of a cane. The entire point was concealment. A walking stick drew no attention. A lightsaber drew every eye in the room. For a Jedi operating in hostile territory, or an elderly Force user who preferred not to announce themselves, the Saber Cane allowed them to carry their weapon through environments where one would normally raise immediate suspicion. The weapon itself functioned identically to a standard saber once drawn. The light foil occupied a curious social niche. Built on lightsaber principles, but scaled down to something closer to a fencing foil, it was lightweight, single-handed, and elegant in proportion. Light foils were adopted by non-force sensitive nobles in certain parts of the galaxy as status weapons and dueling instruments. Each one was individually crafted, treated as a work of art, and carried more so as a symbol of aristocratic identity. At the opposite end of the scale from the Shoto sat the Light Club, also called the Great Lightsaber. Using specialized focusing crystals and power systems, it generated a blade up to 3 meters long, a blade that would have been impossible to wield for most humanoid beings. The weapon existed because some beings weren't humanoid in the conventional sense. Gork, a dark Jedi who was a mutated Gamorrean of enormous stature, carried one. For him, the proportions made sense in the same way a Shoto made sense for Yoda. The lightsaber parasol was created by Koru, a female Sith who led a bandit group. In its standard configuration, it functioned as a single-bladed lightsaber. The hilt alone produced a normal red blade. With the parasol auxiliary attached, the emitters produced multiple red plasma blades simultaneously, radiating outward in a pattern that resembled an open umbrella. Spun at speed, it became a spinning shield of plasma blades rather than a weapon with a single point of contact. Ezra Bridger's early weapon, a lightsaber blaster hybrid, was a practical solution to a practical problem. He wasn't yet a competent saber duelist, and the Empire was everywhere. His hilt combined a standard lightsaber emitter with a short-range blaster capable of firing stun bolts, serving almost like training wheels. It wasn't as powerful as a dedicated blaster or a clean saber strike, but it gave Ezra options he didn't otherwise have. the ability to engage at range when closing to blade distance wasn't viable. As his skills improved, he transitioned to a standard saber. The lightsaber rifle took a different approach to the ranged problem. Rather than building a blaster into a saber hilt, it was a dedicated rifle platform designed to accept a standard lightsaber as ammunition. Once loaded, it channeled the lightsaber's energy into a single, concentrated beam of extraordinary destructive power, something far beyond what a standard blaster could produce. The limitation was brutal. Each lightsaber loaded as fuel could produce approximately 5 shots before the crystal degraded beyond use, and then the rifle began to smoke. One was kept in the Jedi archives, and after Order 66, Chief Librarian Jocasta Nu retrieved it and used it against Darth Vader, though it wasn't enough to stop him. The Far Killer pushed the lightsaber as weapon platform concept to its furthest known point. It was a one-of-a-kind sniper rifle built using lightsaber technology, capable of engaging targets at a range of 100 kilometers. 100! The Jedi Council's response was to declare both the weapon's creator and the Jedi who wielded it apostates, and exile them both. The weapon itself was considered so outside the boundaries of what Jedi philosophy would sanction, a tool designed purely to kill from a distance no enemy could reciprocate, that even building it was treated as a fundamental violation of the Order's principles. The TAG Corporation's Proto-Blade represented what happens when a weapons manufacturer tries to replicate a Jedi weapon without the Kyber crystal, the Force attunement, or the millennia of refinement. The Proto-Blade took the form of a gauntlet that, when activated, ejected a physical edged blade energized with plasma, giving it a yellow glow and genuine lethality. It could cut and it could kill, but it was not as energy efficient as a real lightsaber, requiring a substantial external power supply. The Light Whip operated on lightsaber principles, but replaced the rigid plasma blade with a long, flexible tendril, sometimes several, depending on the configuration. Instead of one large crystal, Light Whips used multiple smaller crystals, and the plasma had no cell barriers maintaining it in a straight line. The result was a weapon that moved like a whip, extended well beyond a sword's reach, and created attack arcs that were genuinely difficult to anticipate or block. The discipline required to use one safely was substantial. A Light Whip's flexible tendrils went where momentum took them, not necessarily where the wielder intended, and the weapon was perfectly capable of removing the wielder's own limbs if technique faltered. Irek Ismarin didn't carry lightsabers. Instead, he had them surgically implanted into his body, 8 of them, embedded alongside subdermal armor pads that protruded from his elbows, forearms, wrists, and knees. The subdermal plating reinforced the areas around each implant and created layered armor coverage across his entire frame. Ismarin was less a lightsaber user and more of a lightsaber himself. We wrap with a couple of LEGO honorable mentions, including the octo-bladed lightsaber, an 8-bladed weapon wielded exclusively by LEGO Darth Maul. Then finally, there's the Kyber Saber from LEGO Star Wars The Freemaker Adventures, forged by an ancient Jedi Master named Barad Cantu from multiple pure Kyber crystals fused into a single solid blade. It was described as the very first lightsaber and said to multiply the wielder's force powers 1,000-fold. But if you had to choose just one lightsaber variant to carry, let us know which one it would be down in the comments.
Everything's amazing!
The Lottery West grant has enabled us to do a complete revamp of our central gallery.
It's so beautiful.